Good morning. This is Friday. This video is going to be the key to go over your Kumon lesson 23, and then I'll probably need another video to go over your Kumon lesson 24. Another option, I'm going to post these videos so you can go over and check your work, but another option is just to bring these up during our Zoom video and we can go over some problems together and practice or check your work as well. All right, here we go. So 35 hundredths. Remember, I'm going to go pretty quickly because I'm expecting that you have already answered these. No cheater, pumpkin eaters. And you're going to correct them. When you're done, you're going to do what we always do when we go over work, is you're going to think in your head, am I ready to move on? Am I so-so? Or am I really struggling? And you're going to score yourself at the top. I'll remind you, plus, check, or minus. And then, of course, I'll know from your assessment that you're going to take later on today or the beginning of next week. And our skill is just right now being able to do the calculation of going from a fraction to a percent and a percent to a fraction. And then the next step in this is being able to relate it to real world problems. All right, so our percent is just the numerator over 100. And remember we said our strategy was just multiplying it by 100 to get that numerator. And we can do that by moving the decimal right. 4 tenths is the same as 40 hundredths, which is 40%. And we're going to move our decimal 2 places right, and we end up getting 40. 971 over 1,000, but we need it over 100. We're going to use our strategy of multiplying by 100, 1, 2, and we end up with, which is just 97.1%. All right, 979, we need it over 100. So if I divide it by 10, I would move my decimal over 1, or I could just start from the beginning and use my trick. 97.9%. This was the toughest one, so let's use our trick. Because this number is over 1, but I need it over 100, not 10,000. So our decimal is going to go what direction? Right. 2 spaces. Okay, so let's do it using our fraction method. So this is 3 over 10,000, but I need it to be over 100. So 10,000 divided by 100 would give me hundredths. But if I do it to the top, I have to do it to the bottom and vice versa. So 3 divided by 100. Where's your decimal hiding? In the back. We're going to go left 2 spaces. And sure enough, we got our answer. So our strategies, we have 3 different ones. One is to, or I guess 2 different ones. The first one is if it ends up being a decimal over 100, we know it just, bam, we got our percent right there. The second one is that if our decimal, our fraction ends up being over 10 or 1,000 or 10,000, so any power of 10 that's not 100, we might have to multiply or divide that number to be able to get our common denominator with 100. Then our last one, so that's using equivalent fractions. Just finding a fraction over 100. Our last one is just to use our trick. Because we know for finding a number over 1, but we really need it over 100, we can just multiply our numerator by 100. And that's our hundredths trick. Just moving it to the right. All right, so stop and think how you're feeling with just decimals to a percent. My guess is you guys are feeling really confident when it's these, which is really the number of ones that you're going to be answering are these. This is really that next level. But how are you feeling with these basic, just computation? We haven't used it yet. All right, so everyone mark up here on your sheet and circle it just like we do in class. All right, now these were much harder because it had whole numbers, and I'm going to go ahead and model both ways to solve it. So our first one is to multiply by 100, because right now this is a whole number over 1, but we needed a number over 100. All right, so if I multiply by 100, I move my decimal place right 2 times 145 is 145%. I can think about this as 2 different fractions if it helps me. A whole pizza is 100 hundredths. The decimal is 45 hundredths. So I have 100% plus 45%, which gives you 145%. All right, 1.04. This number is a whole number. It's just over 1. We need it over 100. So we're going to multiply by 100, which means we move our decimal place right. We have 104, which means 104%. We can think about it as our fractions. 100 hundredths plus 4 hundredths is 100% plus 4%. Number 4. 1.045 times 100. 104.5%. All right, so now we're going to think of this one. We have 100 hundredths or whole, and I have 45 thousandths. But I don't want thousands. I need hundredths to give a percent. So I'm going to divide by 10 and divide by 10. 45 divided by 10 is 4.5. Now I have 100% plus 4.5% gives me 104.5%. All right, we have 10. So 1 is 100%, but I don't have 1, I have 10. So it's 1,000%. Right? 1,000 over 100. 47 hundredths is 47%. So we have 1,000% plus 47% is 1,047%. Let's try our multiplication. Move your decimal. All right, last one. 1.012, sorry. Move your decimal twice, 101.2%. Now we're going to try it with our fraction. We have 100%, and we have 2 12 thousandths. We need to make hundredths, so we're going to divide by 10 over 10. 1,000 divided by 10 is 100. 12 divided by 10 is 1.2. So I have 100% plus 1.2% is 101.2%. All right, so this is really the absolute, mastery of the computation of your percents. These aren't really going to be ones you would usually do in your head. These would be ones that probably you would get out a calculator. Definitely you're not going to be finding 1,000% of something, but these possibly. So you might have a cell where something is giving you money back for sure. I've seen that before. All right, so we're going to move on to our other ones. Go ahead and score your top, plus, check, or minus. And it's okay if these are feeling kind of like a check minus right now. That's okay. Remember, we said the ones that I'm most concerned with are these. This is what the expectation is for 6th grade, is that you are very confident with these. But really, it's the word problems, and they're not going to ask you to go beyond this type of a problem. All right, we're going to go ahead and start checking our Kumon 24, and then we'll stop our video and finish it up with our last video. So we said on these, if you're going the opposite direction, when we went to a percent, we multiplied by 10, but we're going from the percent backwards to the fraction. I'm going to do the same thing I did on the other ones, is we're going to solve it with fractions, strategy number 1. We're also going to practice using our trick, which is not really a trick. All right, 55% means 55 hundredths. And this just means 55 divided by 100. Division means we go left, so we're going to find our decimal and move it left. 70% means 70 hundredths, which is just 70 divided by 100. We're going to find our decimal and move it left, 0.7. 87% is 87 hundredths, which is the same as 87 divided by 100. Find your decimal and slide it left, 0.87. 14.9% is the same as 14.9 over 100. 14.9 divided by 100. Find your decimal and move it 2 places left. 0.8% is the same as 0.8 hundredths. 0.8 divided by 100. Find your decimal and slide it 2 places left. 8 thousandths. 67.02% is the same as 67.02 hundredths. 67.02 divided by 100. Find your decimal and slide it left. All right, now I think it's way easier to go from a percent to a decimal, but you know me, sometimes I'm pretty wacky about some things. So go ahead and score these. How are you feeling about dividing a number by 100? Plus, check, minus. All right, so go ahead and press pause here, and if for some reason you haven't had a chance to finish your Kumon number, page 49, which is the Thursday lesson, please make sure you finish it before you move on to the last video.